home. My name's Dr. P, and I'll be talking to you about goal setting tonight. I am the president and founder of Crimson Coaching, which is a very small company that provides tutoring, academic tutor, test prep, and college counseling to students. But before I was the president and founder of this company, I was a high school teacher. So I started teaching here on Long Island way many years before you guys were born. And I taught high school for about 10 years. So during that time, I began to kind of learn about how students think and what they need. So a lot of people ask me, why is your company called Crimson Coaching? Why name it after a company? The color crimson, which is sort of like a deep red, is the color of my alma mater, Harvard, where I went to college. And so that's why I named it Crimson Coaching, because what I do with students is really, I'm like a coach for them, like an academic coach. And I developed this talk because more than anything, most students, they just kind of go aim, most people, most adults really, even just kind of walk through life a little bit aimlessly, right? But if you really think about what is it that I really want to achieve, I believe that your potential really could be limitless, especially if you start at your guys' age. So tonight's agenda, so to speak, I'll be talking for about a half hour. We're also live streaming this on YouTube. So during the talk, you guys can feel free to ask any questions you want. For the people at home watching this on the live stream, if you want to type your questions in as we go, I'll try to kind of check the live stream and answer them all at the end. Okay. So if you are participating in this wherever you are, you're welcome to take notes. I see someone's got a pen. Feel free to do that. And again, I would just try to stay engaged as possible, however you plan to do that. Before we go any further, though, I do just want to thank you all for being here. I was just telling Ms. Burnson, I've been teaching for 25 years, and this is the longest time I've ever gone without teaching in person. This is my first time in front of students in over 2 years. So if I'm a little rusty, you got to forgive me. I've been teaching to a screen for over 2 years, okay? And so I want to thank you guys for being here, for watching on the live stream. Thank you. And also thanks to Ms. Burnson and Hopog for inviting me. So I'm a historian. My PhD is in history. That's where the doctor comes from. So as a historian, I like to share my sources. Where do I get my information about goal setting from? So for some of it is personal, right? I am what you call a type A personality, or hopefully I'm a recovering type A personality. I was a valedictorian at Connecticut High School just up road way back in 1989. So that meant I was the first of all the 700 kids who graduated in my class. So you had to be pretty goal oriented there. Then when I went to Harvard, this is Harvard way back when in like 1800s, a little bit before I went there, but I graduated from there with high honors. So again, I had to set goals for myself. I went on to get a master's in education so that I could teach in high school, and then a PhD. So again, more goal setting. And I became a yoga teacher, believe it or not, because I love yoga. And I started my own business. So I had to set more goals for myself. And now I'm also writing a book. So some of my goal setting is personal, but some of it's also professional. So I've taught at Great Neck and Scarsdale high schools, as well as a private school in the city for 5 years, where I help students at the beginning of every course. I always ask them to set their own goals, which is something I'll talk about tonight. Now I currently teach as an adjunct, meaning I'm a part-time professor for City University of New York. And I also try to read a lot of academic literature on goal setting. It's just something that's interesting to me. And if you go on my website, I actually have like a little free workbook that I wrote that you can download that's got like a little template for you afterward where you can do some of the exercises that I'm going to talk about tonight. So those are kind of all my sources about goal setting. So I really believe that in order to look forward into the future, we need to actually look back at our past and out around us. So what do I mean by that? Well, the first thing you want to think about is what went well for me last year. So I want you all, especially the students here, I want you to think, what are some things that went really well? It could be sports, could be academic. Maybe one subject went really well. Maybe it's another subject didn't go so well. Okay. Then I want you to think about what were the strategies that helped you to succeed in whatever did go well. So, for example, many times I currently live, for instance, right now, I can see the students practicing at Connecticut High School in the fields for football, lacrosse, baseball, track, and field. And I see how much time they put into their sports, which is wonderful because I'm a physical person too. But sometimes I wonder if I wondered, are the students putting as much time and energy into their academics as they are their sports? So sports are something that went really well for you and you want to do better in academics. Maybe think, well, if I'm spending 15 hours a week on the fields, right? Maybe I also need to spend 15 or at least half of that, at least 7.5 on my homework as well in order to achieve the same kinds of success that I'm achieving on the athletic field. Okay. Then you might want to think about, well, what didn't go so well? And also maybe why not? Maybe it's not a question of time that something didn't go well. Maybe it's that you were struggling on your own. And maybe what you need to do is get some help from either a teacher, a parent, a therapist, a tutor, anything, a friend. Okay. So think about what went well, what didn't go well. And then think about, well, which one of your success strategies can you use on things that went well to things that didn't go so well? So, for example, if I want to raise my math grade by 10 points, well, maybe I'm going to need to not only spend some more time, but maybe I might also need to go to extra help or whatever that is to get the help. So this is kind of these first 4 points are really the looking back, right, to what has already happened. But you also might want to look around you out to who do you admire. And it doesn't have to be a person like, I don't know anybody on the Mets right now. Who's your favorite player on the Mets? Okay, so either look, you doesn't have to be somebody like Pete Alonso or Curtis Granderson. It could be the kid who sits in front of you in Spanish class. And maybe that kid is a whiz in Spanish. And think about, well, what strategies does that student have that I can borrow? Maybe that student, and you might have to ask him or her, maybe that student goes on Duolingo, which is this cool little free app, and practices their Spanish every day. And maybe that's how that person got the A in Spanish. So you might want to look out around you as well. But of course, our heroes as well, people we admire, can also provide us. I'm sure Alonso and Granderson are super hard workers. They probably eat right, get enough sleep, work really hard. Those are 3 things that all of us really would do well to emulate. And ultimately, I really think you want to think about when I see myself when I'm going into 8th grade or when I'm going into 5th grade, what do I want my life to be like? How do I want to have change in a year? Now, this is if you're doing year-long goals, but you can also do this in the middle of the school year. And you can think about, well, at the end of the first quarter, what do I want to have achieved? At the end of the second quarter, what do I want to have achieved? And in doing that, you can make small incremental steps. We're going to talk about setting realistic goals in a second. Any questions so far? No? Okay. Okay. So my next tip is to once you figured out what your goal is, you want to write it down and post it somewhere you can see it every day. The author Henriette Ann Clouser explains that writing goals down activates the part of the brain that is responsible for filtering stimuli, meaning things that are coming into our brain, into urgent and non-urgent categories, which this part of the brain, I'm not a scientist, so that's why I read about this stuff. It's called the reticular activating system, or the RAS. And that sends the goal into the urgent pile after we put our pen to our paper. Okay. Now, I was once coaching a college student on achieving goals, and she was very artistic. And she wound up painting a painting she wrote and painted her goals, and then she put it up in her dorm room. So it doesn't have to be even just like a boring old list, you know. I would say though, and this goes into kind of, I also give a talk on note taking and study skills. And a lot of times students say, well, I like to type out my notes because it's neater. Even if you have the worst handwriting ever, I'm going to encourage you to physically handwrite your goals down. Because when you physically handwrite something down, you remember it a lot better. There are many, I'm not going to cite them here, but there are so many studies that show what we write down, we remember, even if we never look at it again. I'm a big believer, though, that most of us are visual learners, meaning as humans, most of us learn best by seeing stuff. And so I encourage my students, after you write something down, that's 50% of the goal. That's 50% of accomplishing your goal. Then put that list somewhere you can see every day. Whether it's you want to take a picture, and that could be the little wallpaper on your phone, put it in. I used to put my goal. I usually do this at the start of every year. I have personal goals for myself that I do on January 1st. And I used to put them in my bathroom mirror. So every day, at least twice a day, while I was brushing my teeth, I would look at my goals. And guess what? At the end of the year, I usually had about 7 goals. At the end of the year, I would accomplish usually about 5 of them, which is not so bad. So I think looking at your goals every day is really important as well. Has anybody ever heard of this SMART goals? Maybe the adults have. Yeah. Do you know what they stands for? No. All right. Well, maybe we'll find out now. So SMART is an acronym, meaning each of these letters stands for something else. And this is really a way that you want to think about what kinds of goals to set. So the S stands for specific. And you want to make your goal as specific as possible. So I'm going to give you 2 examples. Which one sounds more specific? I want to do better in math, or I want to get a 95 in math. Yeah, the second one, right? So and we'll talk about other ways to make this even more specific in a second. But what my second goal that I stated did was it was measurable. The measure of that goal was my grade. Okay. Maybe if it's sports, if say if you're a runner, it might be I want to break a 8-minute mile or 7-minute mile, whatever it is, right? So it's not necessarily always grade related, but being able to have a measure for success is super important, because how do I know if I'm really doing better in something unless I measure it? Okay. You also want to make it achievable, especially in the time you've allowed. And you're going to see that ART are very related. Okay. So I'm actually going to go through AR and T quickly and we'll talk about how they're related. So the R is realistic and the T is time bound. So I may have a goal for women, I hate to say it, sometimes has to do with our waistline, right? So I may have a goal of I want to lose 10 pounds. But if I say I want to lose 10 pounds by the end of July, for most women, that's pretty unrealistic, right? If I say I want to lose 10 pounds by Thanksgiving, that might be a more realistic time frame, right? So the time that we want to do that will be achievable, right? For for students, well, if I currently have a 70 as my math average and I want to go up to a 95, that might be achievable, but I might need the whole year to get there, right? I might need to set little interim goals for myself. Maybe one quarter, I get to an 80, then an 85, then a 90, then a 95, right? I probably can't go up 25 points in a month. Okay. So all of these things achievable depends on how much time, and realistic depends on how much time. Okay. This part's super important. So before I go on, I just want to make sure there's no questions. Oh, okay. So this is one of my favorite quotes on goal setting, and you're never going to guess who said it. Our goal can only be reached through the vehicle of a plan in which we must fervently believe and upon which we must vigorously act. There is no other route to success. What kind of field would you imagine the person who said this is in? Like, were they a teacher, a businessman, a scientist, an artist? What do you think? Sounds like it, right? Believe it or we got one scientist. What do you think? You agree with hers. Okay. Believe it or not, it's an artist, probably the most famous artist of the 20th century. Pablo Picasso said this. Yeah, because we think of Picasso being like this hugely creative person, right? Who maybe had a lot of dreams, but maybe, not really. But in any endeavor, even a creative one, if you do not have a plan to achieve your dreams, they just stay dreams, right? And so now we're going to talk about you've identified your goals. Well, now you need a plan in order to achieve them. Okay. So you really want to create some kind of action plan once you've gotten your SMART goal, your specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time bound goal. And you want to make your actions specific too. So let's say I have a reasonable goal of maybe raising my math grade from an 85 to a 90 within a single quarter. I think that's a pretty reasonable goal. Okay. What do you think are some actions I might need to take in order to achieve that goal? Might need to study more, maybe, and let's try make that measurable. Rather than saying study more, what could I do to make the more be measurable? Good. I could put a minute on it, study for an hour, maybe study for 15 more minutes per day than I have been studying, right? Good. What's another action I could do if I want to raise my grade 5 or 10 points in a quarter? Yeah. Maybe listen to the teacher more. If one of my challenges that I identified is that my brain was all over the place, right? I may need to figure out why I'm not paying attention. Maybe I'm too far away from the teacher, and maybe if I sit right up in the front of the class, I will pay better attention. Do you know what else you could do? Because attention is actually something that's really difficult for a lot of students. You could force yourself to stay active and write it down. You can also reach out to the teacher. Ask him or her, if you see that I am starting to zone out, I would like for you to come over and do this. And if you do this on my desk, that's a cue to me that I need to start paying more attention. Believe it or not, that most teachers are not going to resent this. They are going to welcome you being mindful enough to know, hey, that's what I need, right? You might also figure out, you know what? I actually need to move a little bit. And so maybe you can talk to teacher about, is there some way where I can get up in the middle of class, maybe go outside, come back, move, and figure that out. But I'm working with your teacher. That is going to be the probably one of the best ways to do that. I would also say I'm a big proponent of one-on-one help. And if you want to raise your grade 5 or 10 points, one of the best ways you could do that, if your teacher offers extra help, make sure you go during lunch, go before school, go after school. Get another kid who does well in that subject to help you. Those are all ways that you can get better. Um, but figure out a way to measure this, and the time frame is going to depend on the goal, right? So say you are an athlete and you're like Granderson and you're pumping iron and you want to get big and strong, right? You're probably not going to take your measurements of your muscles every week. Muscles take more time usually to get bigger. So maybe you'll measure them over a month, right? But probably for your grade, if you have a weekly quiz, write them all down, all your quiz grades down. And if over a month your grades aren't going up, even though you're studying 15 more minutes, you're paying better attention, and you've gone to extra help every week, then that's a time when you might want to realize, okay, I need to adjust my goals if after a certain amount of time I'm not achieving them. Anybody have an idea of why sometimes, what's the biggest reason why we often don't achieve the goals we set for ourselves? What do you think? Yeah, so maybe you got a little bit lazy, perhaps. True. That might be. That might be. Another reason why the goals we set for ourselves we don't achieve. You want to try again? Oh my gosh, are you a brain, are you psychic? Yeah, I think that one of the number one reasons is that our goals are actually that we didn't do the R in SMART, that a lot of the goals we set for ourselves are unrealistic, at least among students, right? I think students want to see immediate progress. So the kid getting the 70 thinks they're not achieving their goal of getting a 95, but that might be unrealistic. So one of the biggest things is because I think, especially, no offense, This generation wants immediate gratification, meaning want things to happen right away. One of the biggest reasons that students don't achieve the goals they set is because they are unrealistic about the time it actually takes to achieve that goal. I was giving a talk about 5 years ago, and there was a ninth grader sitting in the audience, and she asked me. Now she's actually just finished her freshman year at Boston University. She actually became my student, my SAT student, and she raised her hand and she was like, "Well, I want to know how I can take four AP courses, star in the school play, and get all A's and sleep 8 hours a night." And I was like, unfortunately, God has only put 24 hours in a day, right? And there's only so much time we have. And so sometimes you might need to say, well, either I like everything I'm doing and I'm okay with getting B's, or if I really need to get those A's, maybe I need to drop down to one AP course or two AP courses, or maybe not start as in the play. There's some choices that often time forces us to make. Okay. So that's the first reason. Sometimes also is the being realistic about your resources, right? Like sometimes they're like, so for instance, let's say if I wanted to learn how to sing, I have a horrible singing voice, right? And singing is something that I would love to learn how to do, but I would need to definitely hire a private singing coach, because I would not want to subject any person in a class to my singing voice. Like I would need one-on-one, okay, for that. But even if I have the resources, maybe I don't have the time, or maybe you don't have the resources. So you might have to say maybe there are some things where I really can't afford it right now. And then lastly, sometimes people just aren't measuring their goals, right? Um, you know, I actually had a big birthday back in October, and I decided as I got older, I wanted to be strong, and so I hired a personal trainer. And sometimes in a gym, I lift weights, stuff like that. And this gentleman kind of made fun of me that I had my little book and I wrote down how many pounds I was lifting and how many repetitions I did. And I said, well, I'm not going to remember from day to day how many pounds I'm lifting. And the other thing is, I will be able to see progress, right? But now that I write stuff down, I actually get a real sense of, oh, last week I only lifted 55 pounds, but this week I lifted 65 pounds, and I see I'm getting stronger. So in the same way, if you measure your goals, I think it gives you the motivation to keep going. Okay. And sometimes adjusting your goal is not enough. And I want to be very honest about this. Some students have, especially since the pandemic, there's a lot of mental health issues among young people. And if students have depression or anxiety or attention deficit disorder, that may really impede their ability to achieve their goals. So you need to take care of those underlying emotional, psychological, or physical struggles first, and then set those goals, and then you can achieve them. And it's really quite amazing. I can tell you, now I'm not I'm, as I mentioned, a yoga teacher. I like doing holistic things first, but it is amazing to me where I have seen and I have unofficially diagnosed. I've gone to parents and said, I think your son or daughter might have ADD. And then they've gone and they've got tested. And then it turns out that they did. I mean, I had a dad come back to me 6 months later and say, you changed my family's life, because now my son's on medication and now he's able to function. And here's another kid at college now, and he wasn't able to function before because he had ADD. And I really do believe it's something like if you needed glasses, or if your child needed glasses, you would go get them glasses. If they broke their arm, you get them a cast so they could fix their arm. And some students' brains just need different help. So I do encourage families to get that checked out first. Um, Here's another quote. As you can tell, I really like quotes, and I'll tell you who said this first. This is Henry David Thoreau, who was an American 19th century author who wrote in Walden, if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now put the foundations under them. And I really believe that castles in the air, those are like our dreams or our goals, right? And the foundations, that's our action plan. That's what we're going to do to achieve them. And I believe that that is in the grasp of everybody. So before I take any questions and wrap up, I do just want to let you know how you might learn more. I do encourage you all to download my free ebook on my website at crimsoncoaching.com. That'll give you like a little workbook where you can actually write some of these things out. If you like to sign up for my newsletter, I promise it only goes out once a month, and it gives parents a little, educational type article, and then it'll tell you where all of my talks or webinars are. I will tell you, this is as I mentioned, this is my first in-person talk in over 2 years. So I'm kind of doing a mix now of webinars and in-person talks over the summer, and in every newsletter at the bottom, I have what's coming up for that month. And I used to give out little flyers, but I stopped doing that once we went to all virtual, and I should have realized I should have actually brought some. But I have a little PDF that you could print out of my goal setting tips. And then if you like me on Facebook, you'll also get news of when the talks and different publications are coming out. And this talk will be on YouTube. So if you lost anything or you weren't able to take notes, you could go back and rewatch it. But if you go, and that's on the Hauppauge YouTube, Hauppauge Library YouTube. But I have my own YouTube at youtube.com/Crimson Coaching, and I have a ton of other talks like this. For you guys, for your age, because a lot of them are a little bit too old for you, you guys might be interested in the study skills and note taking one for your age. And if you're there, please subscribe because it helps the channel to grow. So that's really all I have for you. I just again want to thank you all for coming here on a steamy summer night out there. And if you're watching at home, thanks. And now to take any questions. Anybody have any? Are there questions on? No? Okay. No? Adults can ask questions too, if you have any. No? Oh, okay. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Are you this nice to your teachers in school? They must love you. They do, yeah. I could see why. You're probably like Mr. Personality, Miss Personable. So what do you think? Do you think you guys will maybe try a little bit of these, maybe even before you start school this year? Yeah. It is hard. Yeah. I love his honesty. You did a great job, but I don't know if I'm going to employ any of what you just talked about. That's okay. I don't take it personally. I'll be honest, this is younger than I normally do it with. Yeah, like I definitely always do it at the start of my college semester. I also did it occasionally with high school students. I haven't done it so much with middle or elementary school students, but I actually think it's a great thing to start at any age, really. I mean, maybe your age is probably youngest. I might do like I'm not going to do it with 3-year-olds. So yeah, but I think it does. And I mean, I can just tell you also, I would tell you that for somebody who deals more with older students, especially older students who are applying to college, if I could give you any one piece of advice, it would be to master basic arithmetic without a calculator. You would be shocked at how teenagers I've had a 16-year-old break down in tears when I asked her to multiply 8 by 8 without a calculator. I kid you not. I had other students look at me like deers in a headlight when I asked them to give me 10% of 100 without a calculator. So there's something that's going on in, I think the problem is they're learning, because I actually have a niece who just finished 4th grade, and they're learning the percents and decimals, but then the teachers let them have a calculator. And then so what happens is they forget how to do it without calculator. And when they have to take the SAT, which is a test to get to college, you there's a part where you're not allowed to use a calculator. And that's where they really struggle. So they can, and unfortunately, those things really set the like they're the foundations for things like algebra later on. So that would be like my one thing I would say, pay attention in math. And this is coming from somebody who hated math. Yeah, you do. That's great. That's great. You do. That's good. That's good. And then, if you can read on your own, read as much as you can. Those are the two things. Yeah. And yeah. Well, you know what I would do? Because I do think reading is also super important. I would read books on stuff you're interested in. So, for example, baseball. Read, the history of the Mets. I won't make you read about Babe Ruth because I know he was a Yankee. I was about to say Babe Ruth, and I'm like, uh-oh, he's gonna. Oh, he is. Okay, okay. So, yeah, because if you start by reading things that you're interested in, then it doesn't seem like such a chore, you know? Yeah. So any questions about goal setting or what's awaiting you in middle school? No? All right. Well, it was a pleasure having you guys here. The audience was small but mighty. So thank you. Thanks.